Om Namo Narayana. Dear devotees of Chicago Kalibari, today is our fifth session of the Essentials of Sanatana Dharma. This lecture will be done by both Mr. Subramaniam and Mrs. Vidya Subramaniam. And with this, let me hand over the mic to Subramaniams.
Thank you. Namaskaram to all. Welcome to session 5 of the Essentials of Sanatana Dharma. As usual, we'll start with our Jnana Slokams. Om Gajananam Bodha Ganati Sevitam Kapita Jambu Palasara Bhakshitam Uma Sutam Shoka Vinashakaranam Namami Vigneshwara Pada Pankajam Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sadashiva Samarambam Sankaracharya Madhyamam Asmat Acharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sri Sri Shantananda Avadhuta Sadgurave Namaha. We are happy to continue this series on the essentials of Sanatana Dharma. We would like to start with some of the basics of Sanatana Dharma, including a very quick review of last session, which we did. We had explained about the Vedangas, part of Vedas, the limbs of Vedas, which are supporting the main Vedas, 6 of them, and of which Siksha was considered as number 1, which deals with the phonetics, the pronunciation, which really causes the right kind of sounds and vibrations. We talked in detail about Siksha and also the key steps involved in it, the Kramam, as they call it, in ascending complexity, ending up with Ghanam. So it requires skills that are developed over many years in Veda Padasala, and it is recited in chorus when people sit together, the Pandits, in one unison voice. So we also had a demonstration of Ganam by my good friend Srinivasan from Virginia, and eventually I had explained what is the application of these phonetics to music. We had several interludes of music too in the last session. So having reviewed this last session quickly, for the benefit of those who did not participate in this, we'll continue with this session 5 today. You know, in my school days, long ago, when we filled up application forms, there was a column that used to ask, what is your faith? It wasn't really called religion, it was just called faith, but it meant the religion. So faith is belief and trust. In the traditional doctrines of a religion, or a firm belief in something. So that is what is faith. And Sanatana Dharma relies heavily on faith. Faith is kind of emotional. Somebody can believe in something and somebody else may not believe in it. It is nothing to do with really intellect or intelligence, because it is a firm belief in something for which there is no proof. Intellect can relate to proof. And many people will not accept anything unless it carries a proof. So in Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, there are three kinds of proof, or what is called pramana in Sanskrit. Number one is called pratyaksha, what is usually considered the only possible type of proof in mechanistic science, direct proof. That's only one. For example, I say, I can see the fire because it is right there in front of me. So according to the pratyaksha pramana, I can believe in the existence of God only if I am able to see God. So many people do not believe in it because we cannot see him. So we have to show him. So that is one type of pramana or kind of proof. The second one is called anumana. It's deduction. Anumana means deduction. I cannot see the fire, but I can see the smoke coming out. I'm sure fire must be there because otherwise the smoke will not come. So according to Anumana Pramana, I can believe in the existence of God because I see the perfection of creation and I experience the voice of my conscience. I can have any number of deductions. I like to relate a small experience of mine many years ago when my grandson was about 6 years old. One day he came back from school and asked me a question, Tata, do you believe in God? I said, I do, but why are you asking me this question? Because my friend Nathan in the school said he doesn't believe in God. And I asked him why he doesn't believe in God. Yes, I asked him the question, but what he said was, he cannot see God. He said, can you show me God? I said, no, in that case, I can't believe him. I said, very good, nice question. So that day we had some new furniture at home and we had a new table, a center table, nice one. So I asked my grandson, you see this table? Yes, Tata. Do you know who made it? Yes, I don't know. Appa went and bought it from a shop. Oh, I see. He bought it from a shop, but you don't know who has made it. Yes, I don't know. But somebody must have made it, right? Yes, he said somebody must have made it. So you believe that somebody has made it, right? Yes. So similar way, I see so many things here. I said somebody must have made it. That somebody, I call him as God. Oh, I see, Tata. That seems to be good. I think that's a good reason to believe in God. So this is a typical example of how Hanumana or deduction. There is something which you can see, but you don't know who has made it, but somebody has made it. That itself is a belief. The third type of Vedic proof is called Sabdha, or what is called authoritative teaching. I cannot see the fire, but because a person of authority whom I rely on tells me fire exists, therefore I believe it. The third type of proof is not really recognized by scientists, but nevertheless it is used amply in sciences. The problem with the third type of proof is that authoritative person, whoever is there, must be honest, well qualified, knowledgeable. Otherwise, everything is spoiled. It becomes like a blind leading another blind. So Vedic scriptures, they recommend that finding a proper teacher, a qualified teacher, is the most crucial factor in the pursuance of knowledge. And such qualified teachers whom the people believed and relied on, they were called acharyas. Like you see in the picture, Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhavacharya. They are all called acharyas, and Sanatana Dharma is rooted in the wisdom of these acharyas. You know, in South India, between the 7th and 12th centuries, there were 63 Nayanars who were all saints who came from different backgrounds, you know, artisans like washerman, hunter, potters, oil merchants, and so on, from different professions and different backgrounds. But what they had in common was the devotion towards Shiva, God. They 63 showed faith, such a faith, blending into kind of a marvelous scripture and devotion. Likewise, there were 12 great Alvars. Alvar itself in Tamil means those immersed in God, kind of deep aram, where they were Tamil poet saints in South India, including one divine woman called Andal. You must have heard of it, Srivilliputtur. All these had a common bhakti towards Vishnu. And what did they do? They created Tirumurai and 4,000 Divya Prabandhams composed by Nayanmars and Alvars. And these scriptures are equivalent to Vedas. So these saints, they guided the kings in those days in Sanatana Dharma. The result of which you can see today, the wonderful huge temples everywhere in South India, in Tamil Nadu particularly. Millions of people helped to build these temples, exotic temples, based on their faith, not for money, not for monetary gains. They lived very simple lives, but what held them together was the great faith. Even though they came from different professions, even the kings were rich, but they also took the guidance from these saints. So you had, similarly in North India, if you look at it, there were many saints, mostly after 15th century, like you had Kabir Das, Vallabhacharya, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Tulsidas, Mirabai, Sant Tukaram, Yaneshwar from Maharashtra, who all demonstrated faith and wisdom to obtain salvation. These names are still there, and the trail they left is worship. They are all people who guided others in the pursuit of Sanatana Dharma. Today we have many songs. The Bhakti movement itself was great, like Saint Tyagaraja. He sang Entharo Mahanubhavalu, Antariki Vandanamu. Entharo Mahanubhavalu means there were so many. How many Mahanubhavans, the saints? To them I worship, I pay my salutations. Now, these teachers taught many principles of Hinduism that go from logic to a state beyond logic. They taught us to adhere to the principles of nature. They taught us that nature is more powerful than humans. And when a conflict comes between humans and nature, nature always wins. But when humans and nature cooperate, the human beings will win. So if our faith is supported by intelligence and personal experience, it can change and transform our society in a progressive way. The conviction of Sarvam Brahmamayam Jagat, it considers all activities as offerings to the Supreme. The infinite is being constantly pursued. in the finite world we live in. The ultimate goal of Hindus, according to Sanatana Dharma, is to live for others, live for the benefit of the world, and for the all-pervasive reality. Swami Vivekananda once he said, I am not handsome, but I can give my hand to some who need help. Such a beautiful saying, the word handsome being split into hand and to somebody who needs help. So with this, I want to have a small interlude with a little song.
सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति सबको तीजो, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति सबको तीजो, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति स्वरूप आप है, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति स्वरूप आप है, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति जीवन का मर्म है, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति जीवन का मर्म है। गुरुदेव 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 गुरुदेव, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति सबको तीजो, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति सबको तीजो, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति स्वरूप आप है, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति स्वरूप आप है, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति जीवन का मर्म है, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति जीवन का मर्म है। गुरुदेव 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 गुरुदेव, सत्य धर्म प्रेम शांति सबको तीजो।
A beautiful song, Satya Dharma Shanti. But with all this, you know, when you look at the world, a Hindu is often misunderstood as having an attitude of detachment and proceeding entirely in a spiritual path, misfit in present modern society, called as unpractical. But if you look at it closely, the Sanatana Dharma refutes this charge. Sanatana Dharma does not ignore the practical needs of life, but it only invests them with a spiritual significance. How does it do it? Let's go to the next slide. There is a beautiful concept, a key concept in Sanatana Dharma, which is called Purushartha. Purushartha really means object of human pursuit, the goal. And there are 4 goals prescribed here. But let's take a look around the world around us. Every day we come across many types of people, speak to them, hear them. We see many people are restless, anxious, unhappy. Even those having all kinds of material comforts seem to be discontented with something or other. They pick upon something very frivolous and start an unnecessary argument. They find fault with many things, like saying, I am okay, but you are not okay. Many live artificial lives, unnatural, disrespecting, destroying, consuming, damaging everything we can in nature, just for the heck of it. But they seem to forget that life is a balancing act. And on this tight rope, we must strike a balance between our desires and virtues. The primary purpose of any religion is to help an individual in accomplishing what the goals in life are. Progress in a harmonious manner with many objects, kind of multitasking, you can say. So according to our Indian centuries-old wisdom, a human born on this earth must pursue what is called Purushartha, the only way to seek a progression. And these are classified into 4 different goals called Dharmartha Kama Moksha, which means 4 goals, starting with Dharma, which deals with performance of righteous deeds. Artha is something referred to material comforts, material wealth. Kama, sensual and mental pleasures, psychological values, and ultimately moksha or spiritual salvation or liberation, you can say. So this is not a step-by-step ladder that you can't say, I'm going to do dharma today and tomorrow I will do artha and day after I'll do kama and 4th day we'll do moksha. It is the balancing act. You have to have all the 4 together. None can be ignored in this. So what does a person conceive as needs, basic needs? You know, there is a Maslow's theory of hierarchy, which is like a pyramid. And you say basic needs and then material needs and then other recognition needs and ultimately self-actualization, as they call. So here, the artha is something very important. Everybody needs money, everybody needs food, everybody needs material things. So in fact, the book on economics is called Arthashastra, right? So such needs are there for which you need to have a house, you need to have a car, you need to have many things to be happy. So here, they have given importance to all, starting from dharma, but the whole foundation is based on dharma. It is something in our daily life that we have to do, follow a certain law by which we can acquire material wealth, we satisfy our desires, and also at the same time, we go up the ladder in spiritual elevation. The eternal bliss, of course, ultimately known as moksha, but dharma is placed in the first. So the closest I can find in English for dharma is righteousness or ethics. Dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. It's pronounced dharmo rakshati rakshitaha. It's a Sanskrit sloka. This sloka is mentioned in Mahabharata. One who follows the path of dharma will always be protected. So there are different types of dharma, but I am going to talk to you more on the simplest applicable dharma. As I said earlier, Hinduism focuses in your personal development, your development by yourself. Atmana Atmanam. So, what is this common dharma? It's called Samanya Dharmas. Samanya means general, you can say universal, not generic. It is something which keeps the society in balance. Like you have in a government and in a country, the 3 branches. You have the legislative, you have the executive, you have also the judiciary. These 3 things keep the whole country in balance. One is check against the other. So here it is a law which governs all, a general law, to make sure that everybody is happy, but follow certain common laws. And it is called Ahimsa Satyamasteyam Saucham Indriya Nigraha. That is a Manu Dharma Smriti, which says this Ahimsa Satyam Asteyam Saucham Indriya Nigraha. There are 5 of them, starting with Ahimsa or truth. Satyam is truth. Ahimsa is non-violence. Asteyam is not stealing other or coveting other property. Saucham is purity, cleanliness, and Indriya Nigraham is controlling one's senses. So let's talk about these in detail, because in addition to these 5, there are also the Vedas have laid stress upon saying the truth, following dharma. By the saying, say, Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atiti Devo Bhava. In Taittiriya Upanishad, you have this coming up. So it shows additional dharmas, but we are not covering that right now. We are going to talk about these 5 in slightly more detail. Ahimsa itself means non-violence, a virtue which is indispensable. Ahimsa pratishtayam tat sandido vairatyagaha. This is the ancient wisdom from Patanjali Maharishi. It means when a person stands firm in his commitment to ahimsa, then all other creatures will cease to feel enmity towards him. If you don't fight and you are keeping quiet, why should somebody else will come unless he is jealous of you? In a nutshell, what it means is when you stop harming others, others will also gradually stop to harm you. Now, ahimsa is prescribed in Manu Dharma as the first of Samanya Dharmas. And in Yoga Shastra too, it is the first step of yoga. Such is the greatness of this virtue of ahimsa. We have no justification for killing any creature. The practice of this virtue has been described as a path leading to yoga, the complete detachment as it comes in of the mind from all activities. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Patanjali Yoga Sutra says that Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So desires always arise in our minds, and it is the mind that gives rise to all thoughts, both good and bad. So it can be truly said that our mind is the primary cause of all evil. Ahimsa paramo dharmaha. Ahimsa, or non-violence, is the supreme dharma. There is nothing which the mind cannot achieve. You know, 2 days back, I was giving a commentary on Kanchi Paramacharya's lectures, and it talks about this, that the mind is really like a mighty elephant. It is a huge animal, but utterly useless if it is not controlled. Just imagine an elephant getting mad. It can bring havoc. So the mind is like that, much stronger than an elephant. It has to be under control. Ahimsa means much more than non-violence. It implies not just physical harm, but even harm by thought or word. The idea of ahimsa is aimed at mind control by thought or word. So when you talk, we should refrain when making such statements which are going to wound somebody else's feelings. Kanchi Paramacharya says that when a child does some mischief out of ignorance, don't we try to correct him? So he says, why not have the same approach of treating someone provoking you like a child? Don't beat it, but try to point out what is wrong and use soft words. So obviously, we can't practice this at all times. Certain types of violence are justified according to the Shastras, and they are not considered sinful or adharmic, because such violence is not committed for purely personal delight or personal desire, but in pursuance of our duty towards the society. Like, for example, a policeman hitting someone to maintain law and order, or sentencing a murderer to death, killing an enemy in war. These are all essential violence which cannot be avoided. So they are exceptions. So that's about ahimsa. Talking about satyam. Satyam means truthfulness. It means mano vak aikyaha, which means the mind and speech are well integrated. What you think comes out as words in mind. It is the truth which comes out of the mind. So God has given us the gift of speech so that you may give expression to your mind and thoughts and feelings. And mind and talk should be in accordance. But by constant lamenting and complaining about something, even if it is true, neither the talker nor the community is benefited. So it's a futile kind of accord. Even though you talk what you think like, but it is futile. It cannot be called truthfulness. They say the government is doing this, the government is doing it, this politician is no good. Constantly complain about external factors. So this is something which is not satyam. It means voicing good thoughts. It means good thoughts should come from mind. Satyaha bhutam hitam priyam, says Adi Shankara's Prashnottara Malika. It says Satyam bhutam hitam priyam, means doing good through thought, word and deed, that is called satyam, truthfulness. It is not enough that you speak to a man what is good for him, but you must speak it with affection. The one to whom your words or address must also find them acceptable. So satyam is something which is more than just speaking truth. It has to be truth which would be beneficial and not just straight talking, even though you may speak out your mind. It has to be something beneficial and liked by people. So moving further to asteyam. Asteyam means that we should not desire or steal other people's belongings, not acquire by force. Keep to yourself what is legitimately earned. So that is one quality which is considered a samanya dharma. And saucha. Saucham is not just only cleanliness, it's a purity of mind and body both. Bodily purity is essential. Since many, many centuries, thousands of years, personal hygiene has been stressed in Shastras. This is particularly relevant now in the pandemic situation when we are required to wear masks and follow certain distancing and so on. In Shastras, they have specified that one should have a separate Tirtha Patra, a drinking vessel. In those days, they were using metal. So each one had a small drinking glass for himself. And one should not wear others' clothes. One should always wear clean, washed clothes, not reuse the same again and again without you washing. These are all some of the prescriptions in Shastra which tell you about hygiene. Now, while on this point, I want to say that especially when reciting Vedas or mantras, it's very important to follow Saucham or cleanliness. I see many people wearing shorts, short dresses, tight-fitting yoga pants, jeans that are used again and again without washing, T-shirts which reflect a very casual attitude, like a weekend wear now in offices they wear T-shirts and jeans. To them, I'd like to ask this question: don't we see Doctors and nurses wearing hygienic wear and masks in hospitals. We see members of the police, the cops, the armed forces, firefighters, pastors and teachers, even chefs in restaurants following a certain dress code which suits their profession. Likewise, why not we follow a dress code while reciting mantras, participating in pujas? You know, everything else will fit into place because it develops a feeling of togetherness, a feeling of devotion, and shows respect to the deities that we worship. At the same time, it draws some respect from spectators and other devotees also. So I think it's a point to be noted, Saucham, just not bodily cleanliness, but also purity in mind, thinking nicely, thinking good about things. And lastly, we come to Indriya Nigraham, which means this limits placed on sensual enjoyment. Say, you have seen the great three monkeys of Mahatma Gandhi, where says the eyes must not see evil, the ears should not hear evil, and the mouth should not speak evil. So that really is reflective of what is meant by controlling your senses. So the mind is meant for sadhana, for getting into an atmic discipline. Those senses must be fed only to the extent necessary and not overfed. So these are the 5 dharmas, samanya dharmas. Now it is applicable to all, a general law. It's not something which is confined to only one community. Anybody can follow it. So having said that about samanya dharmas, how do you pursue the purusharthas? Now Vedas are the dharma pramanas, as they call, which establishes the truth, and they tell you what is the right thing. So we mentioned about the 14 basic sastras, Vedas and Vedangas, that tell us about the doctrines and practices of dharma. But happiness, as you see, comes from 2 kinds. One is a short-term, momentary, and the other one is a long-term, eternal one. Both are attainable in this life, nothing that it is not attainable. This they also mentioned in Purusha Suktam, which says, Tamevan vidvan amritam iha bhavati na anya pantha. So there is a beautiful line coming up in Purusha Suktam. So you see the diagram here, you have dharma, artha, and kama and moksha. Now dharma, artha, kama, they are all interacting to every day we have, eventually leading up to moksha. So it is not that we pursue one of them individually, we pursue all these 3, dharma, artha, kama, together, but keeping moksha as the ultimate goal. So there are many, many examples of these things happening in life. You see, there were so many Maharishis who demonstrated that the bliss can be acquired in this life itself. While other religions all say you can attain moksha or heaven only in the life after death. But not so with Sanatana Dharma. It says it can be attained in this life itself. Tamevan vidvan amritam iha bhavati. So here we have these great example from different rishis and different people who came from ordinary backgrounds and who demonstrated that you can attain bliss in this life itself by following the Purusharthas. For example, you have Ramakrishna Paramahansa himself. He came from a very ordinary background, but today, you see, his name is everlasting. he has shown that bliss could be attained in his own life. He was so balanced in his approach that today you have Ramakrishna mission all over the world. His name lives. But he didn't have a bank account. He didn't have 1 cent in his account on cash. Led a very simple life. But his name lives. And that shows that he acquired bliss in his life. At the same time, he contributed to society in such a large measure. This is just one example. I can give you another example from my own guru, Shantananda Swamigal, who started in Pudukkottai, a small place town. In a hut, he has a small temple. He built a temple there. Somebody donated land to him. He built one temple. Then he had a vision to build another temple. He roamed around and found a mountain, a hillock, on top of which he built another one called Skandashram. And the third one in Chennai, I was fortunate to accompany him to review the plot, which was donated again by a retired person. He says, I don't know what to do with it because there are slums all around there. There is no road. I don't know what to do with it. Please take it. I accompanied him to see that plot, and it was full of thorns, no road, nothing. In hot sun, we sat there and saw that. And that is today transformed into a beautiful temple entirely by public contribution. This person had no bank account, no single rupee in his pocket, lived a very simple life. There are hundreds of them, not one. I'm just giving you 2 life examples. So these short-term measures or happiness, you get artha and kama, following dharma, gives you temporary. You can buy a home, tomorrow you can sell it. You can and buy a latest Benz car or BMW, tomorrow you can sell it. But this one, the long-term one, lasts forever. The temples built by those great kings, by those great Swamiji are still living, and they are now serving a lot of people. So this is something which is very, very important here. Going further, the Purusha Sukta is something which I want to talk to you about, because it's again a part of the Vedas. Suktam, in Sanskrit, it's a beautiful language. Samskritam means well done, Samskritam. Samskaram means what ought to be done well. Samskaram. Suktam, what is well said. Sa uktam. Stotram is coming from stuti. What you do for worship. Praising, stuti. So here Suktam is a well said one. We see all kinds of creatures around us, and they're all various time units and measures, and they are various seasons. The question comes, who created them, and was it one or more creators? We find so many thousands of creatures. Some are happy, some are in grief. The Purusha Sukta is one of the finest collection of mantras that contain answers to many of these questions. The word Purusha itself signifies here God Almighty or Paramatman, or you can call it by whatever name. In fact, this is used in worship of any deity. When they do Abhishekam for Shiva, or when they do worship Vishnu, this Purusha Sukta is recited. The maker of this universe is characterized as the Mahapurusha, or the great being. And the great Purusha refers to the all-powerful Paramatma. It's a part of the Vedas which proclaims the knowledge of Paramatma. The Purusha Sukta is an important part of Rig Veda, but is also appearing in other Vedas. The most commonly used Sukta is 24 mantras. it deals with the subject of creation. I'm going to just give you samples of this Purusha Suktam, not recited in full. It's used in Abhishekams, and it is used in other rituals like homams also. Hari Om. Om Sagasrasirsha Purushaha Sagasracha Sagasrapad Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva Atyatishthadashangulam Purusham Ye Vedagam Sarvamom Yadbhudam Yachabhavyam Udamrtatvaseshanaha Yadannena Dirogati Etavanasya Mahima Ato jajahum cha purushaha padosya vishvabhutani tripadasya divi tribhaktau dait purushaha padosya bhavat punaha tato vishvamakramate sasananasane abhi tasmat virada jayata virajo adipurushaha sajato atyarisyata Paschat bhumi mato puraha yat purushena havisha deva yajyamatanvata vasanto asya sitajam grishmayitmasharatavihi. It goes on. So this, when it is recited in chorus in temples, it creates vibrations, and it is saying the Purusha, the Supreme Being, has 1,000 heads. Sahasrasisha Purushaha. Sahasracha Sahasrapat. 1,000 eyes and 1,000 feet. Just imagine how this figure could be. Sabhumim Vishvato Vritva. He enveloped this world from all sides. Atyatishta Dasangulam. Dasangulam means 10 angulas or 10 inches. And he has crossed or transcended by 10 angulas. Purusham ye vedagam sarvam. This is everything. Yadodam yachabhavyam udamrtatva sesanaha yadannena dirokati. So when you recite this, you get a certain feeling and you get a joy which makes you take you towards some activities with more vigor, more energy. It gives you certain radiance in your face. It gives you strength in your body. It leads you eventually to prosperity and power. So that is the greatness of reciting this Purusha Sukta. So we are coming to the end of this presentation today. What we have covered today about the Purusharthas, the 4 Purusharthas, and with emphasis on Samanya Dharmas. So we'll have a little interlude now with the music. Yep.
Satya Sanadhana Nitya Niranjana Bhakta Parayana Narayana. Satya Sanadhana Nitya Niranjana Bhakta Parayana Narayana. Narayana Hari Narayana. Narayana Hari Narayana. Narayana Shriman Narayana. Narayana Shriman Narayana. Narayana Badri Narayana. Narayana Badri Narayana. Narayana Satya Narayana. Satya Narayana. Satya Narayana.
Even the name here is Satya Narayana. So Indian names, Hindu names, all reflect qualities, Satya Narayana. So Every one of these names has got a meaning. So to conclude this, we are going to have the Shanti mantra or its peace invocation, which comes at the start as well as the end of the Purusha Suktam, which is Om Tacham Yora Vrinimage Gatum Yajnaya Gatum Yajnapataye Daivi Swastirastunaha Swastir Banushebjaha Urdam Jigadu Beshajam Sando Astu Dipate Sanchatushpate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. In one of the earlier sessions, I've explained to you the meaning of this particular Shanti mantra, which is really implying that our Sanatana Dharma respects all individuals. 2 feet or 4 feet doesn't matter. It even worships all plants, which gives our medicinal plants, and expects that everybody should be healthy and happy. And we should sing that. It says Tacham, that Brahman, that Almighty, and eventually ends with Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace. Why do you have to say it 3 times? Is it not enough if you say just only Om Shanti? Well, this is again connected with Purushartha. In some of these sutram, I think it's the Pravachana Sutram, it says Ata Trividat Dukkhayantaha Nivrittihi Atyanta Purushartaha. Which means Ata Trivat Dukkhanta. Dukkha means misery or some conditions of difficulty. Trivat means 3 types. Nivrittihi, relief. Atyanta Purushartaha. The elimination of the 3-fold suffering. That is the artha or purpose of life. Again, coming to Purushartham. So even though these 3-fold suffering is not very clearly specified in this, but what refers to is commonly, one is called Adi Daivika. Daivika means divine or acts of God, as they call it. In force majeure clauses, you have these acts of God because people don't have control on it, like storms, earthquakes, fires, ocean uprising, tsunamis. Who has got control? You can probably predict it, but then you have no control on it. So these are of divine origin. So Adi Daivika. So that is one kind of problem that you have, and people suffer from it, on which you have no control. So one Shanti for that. What else we can do except praying? The second is called Adi Bhautika. Bhautika comes in Bhumi. Bhumi is earth, which is originated from the physical material being around us, on which we have some reasonable control. For example, we are troubled by other living entities. When you go on the road, some dog may chase you and bite you. So you have to guard yourself, put the dog on leash. Or if you're sleeping somewhere, insect can come and bite you. Mosquitoes can bite. So put a mosquito net or something to repel the mosquitoes. So there is some reasonable control. You cannot completely eliminate it, but it will be there. It is a kind of natural thing which is happening, but you have some reasonable control on it. The third is called Adhyatmika. Atmika means from self, generated within self. There are people who generate their own problems by drinking too much, by smoking too much. All these are created by oneself within their own body, inflicted sort of. You get fever, then you get blood pressure, you get all kinds of other problems, which are all pertaining to the body. And some people even create their own mental problems. They imagine things which will happen. Something bad is going to happen. They got getting worried. So these are all troubles created, misery created by one's own self. So three kinds: one created by God, another created by external factors within this planet, and third one created from within. So with these three kinds of sufferings, you need to have peace, isn't it? So you say Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti 3 times, so that you get peace from all these three factors. So that is the philosophy behind this Shanti mantra. And it is a very common thing, Shanti mantra, which is recited almost in all our rituals and our recitations. So with that, we would like to conclude the session number 5 with this peace invocation. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Over to you, Sampath.
Hello, devotees of Chicago Kalibari. As usual, both Vidya and Professor Subramaniam, through their excellent teamwork, brought to you the essentials of Sanatana Dharma. The one thing struck me was the edifice of Sanatana Dharma is built on the pillars of faith. Again, faith or the belief is such an essential element of life, and it's not a blind faith. The faith has been experimented with conviction by our gurus and great saints from time to time, from time immemorial. You see, that's what it is. And they tested it and found that faith works. One thing struck me very recently, particularly with the COVID situation. I saw a video of an action taking place in a hospital in southern India, where the ICU patients are laid down on the corridors or the verandas of the hospital. It's a kind of an improvised situation. And there were patients who were in coma, almost given up. See, as a last resort, they called a few pandits who could chant Trayambagam Yajamage Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urva Rukamiva Bandhanan Mrityo Nukshiyamam Amritat. This is a statement in our scriptures, Vedas and them. And they have been practiced from time immemorial by these rishis, and also as recently as here and even in our Kalibari. We do that again and again. Surprisingly, it so happened 2 or 3 patients, who were in a coma stage, they were moving their fingers into a yoga mudra. Can you imagine that? There is a given up case by the doctors. And this happened few weeks ago, and then it was taped, the videos taped by somebody, the chanting was videotaped, and the movement of the fingers were videotaped, and they were in a yoga mudra, kind of a mudra, I think it was there. Not one patient, 2 or 3 of them. Can you imagine that? The faith is a product of mind. Has it got any relationship with body? This is a typical example of us today. How can we disbelieve that the rishis did not experiment this in their own way? May not be in an hospital atmosphere, but certainly they would have done maybe in the forest or anywhere where they did their penance. And from their experience, they experienced it and they had formed a conviction. These are all the mental process which is taking place. And that conviction and the faith works. They found it probably thousands and thousands of years back. But as recently as 2 weeks ago with the COVID situation, they found this Trayambagam Yajamage works, which is nothing but a mantra and is a product of faith, and then faith works, How can we disbelieve, in our Sanatana Dharma, which has been that one? And both Subramaniam and Mrs. Vidya brought out this such a complicated subjects and thing, but so very well brought in a very simple language to be understood by our people, Again, we will be having these sessions on a continuing basis, and please do participate. We will post, as and when it occurs, and they all will be on live. With this, I'll conclude today's sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again to all. Stay tuned for session 6.